Before I begin, I just want to say I'll be doing videos as often as I can. So if you like my commentary and want to see more, think about subscribing to my YouTube channel. When trying to create change in the world, it's obvious what's wrong with it. But it's not always obvious the wrong ways to try and change it, as well as the insidious ways the establishment will try to protect itself. We must be astute and not fall prey to the same traps our predecessors did. Not only that, but we must be aware of those who claim to be our allies, but maybe are in fact offering themselves as a different and even more brutal master. So, first, let's establish what we want. Communism is supposed to be an expansion of democracy. Authoritarian communism takes away the only aspect of government, of society, where workers have any control, the state. You not only have no democracy in the workplace now, you no longer have it anywhere. Why trust Western media sources, though? Maybe China is democratic. Well, then I ask you, where are all the other political parties? Only the so-called Communist Party has ruled, which, if it's a good party, then great. But we must always keep in mind the possibility we may be wrong. I mean, if you don't, how can you say with any certainty you are right? You stand on dogma and maxims. Authoritarian communism, like any type of authoritarian, is therefore a cult. If what we want is freedom in the workplace, we should also want it in the government. And if communism is where power is given to the proletariat, and there is only one party for them to choose from, then that system is certainly not communist, since it's taking away choices and freedom from the workers. Again, the whole point of communism is that workers and laborers have choices and freedom, which they do not have under a capitalist system. But under the so-called communist state, the Soviet Union and China, they have even less. The problem in America isn't that we have too many parties, but rather we have too few. And it's only because we have one extra party in this country that progress has been made. It's because at least on occasion, one party is better than another that people can turn to. If not, then slavery would still exist. Segregation would still exist. The New Deal would never have happened. Women wouldn't have the right to vote. And homosexuality would still be against the law, let alone gay people getting married. All of these things happened because the people, the proletariat, had choices and freedom. And that makes America more communist than China. The other people who will try to be our friends are grifters, people like Jimmy Dore who amusingly call themselves leftists, but do pretty much everything they can to either show that they aren't or advocate strategies that are utterly asinine, like force the vote. And now he goes on Tucker Carlson. Now, this is nothing new. Dave Rubin did this too, but most people seem to be aware Dave is a grifter, and I'm rather confused why it seems to be taking people so long figuring out that Jimmy is as well. In a way, they represent the opposite problem of authoritarians. Usually, when it comes to politics, they argue we need to start a third party, which would be great if you could show third parties worked. Of course, effectively, we've had a two-party system. There hasn't been a third party in nearly 2 centuries. And I'm not sure we really want to risk the future on some harebrained scheme like starting a third party, which hasn't ever worked in recent history. Then somebody like Jimmy will say we should join forces with white nationalists like Tucker Carlson. Sorry, sweetheart, but socialist joining forces with white nationalists has already been tried back in the 30s. So you know what? Congratulations. You've restarted the fucking Nazis. And then they say they, like I mentioned, force the vote, as if AOC is somehow a dictator who can bend other members of the government to her will. And then the squad does do something like force the vote when they held the line on the bipartisan infrastructure bill and prevented it from passing. And what do? You get fucking crickets. It seems Jimmy is too busy peddling horse erection pills or whatever it is. He's a fucking con man. And now we should investigate. I'm done with Jimmy. Now we should investigate the ways in which the powers that be will attempt to undermine us. Now, there are, of course, the obvious ways: paying dark money to conservative politicians and hiring conservative commentators to disseminate propaganda. There are, however, less visible ways of stirring up trouble, like the FBI wiretapping and placing informants in leftist organizations. There shouldn't be any doubt that the government is still trying to break up leftist organizations like they did in the 70s with the Black Panthers. You might wonder why the FBI cares about the Black Panthers. It's important to remember the FBI is a government agency, and the politicians that get elected to government posts are usually conservatives because they have the most campaign money, because of dark money. Hence why being political, voting, and donating to non-corporate politicians is imperative if we don't want to be crushed like we were decades ago. That way, agencies like the FBI have handlers. They can be held accountable when they break the law. You have watchmen then watching the watchmen. Now, it shouldn't surprise anybody if it turns out in the future that the FBI and the CIA has been trying to undermine progress. That's pretty much why they were created. Before the FBI attacked the mob, the first people they went after, long before Capone, was communists and leftists in 1919. And of course, I think most people today thankfully know that the FBI wiretapped King and Malcolm and the Black Panthers, as I said. There's no reason we should think they are more accountable than they were in the past. No new laws, to my knowledge, to prevent them from using their powers against us. Now, in this country, our biggest threat is, the plutocrats. Just recently, it was discovered Facebook boosted conservative content, and AT&T was heavily funding a fascist news network. This should come as a surprise to exactly nobody. I encourage anybody to read Noam Chomsky's Manufacturing Consent. Of course, they would boost the content of conservatives, the people who want to lower taxes. They're on the same side. Therefore, investigative journalism and whistleblowers, like the people who revealed what Facebook were doing, are so important. That way, the criticism of the public can be brought to bear. Facebook can be boycotted and AT&T called out on television like it was with John Oliver. They work in the darkness because they fear the public knowing what they did. The public is how they have so much power. It's why they have so much power, so much wealth, because we use their products. Sure, they want to keep the public subjugated, but they can only do that by keeping the public ignorant. A bit like bread and circuses kept people placid. It would be nice if we could simply fight the enemy in front of us, but conservatives are too cowardly. They must fight us from the dark, because they know if they come out as Republican, their ideas will fall apart. Few things are as easily refuted as conservative talking points. Again, before I go, I just want to let you know, if you liked my content, like, share, subscribe. If you think we should have more progressive advocates out there, as I do, I think you should support my channel. Thank you for listening, and have a good Halloween.